but of course Penny, one of the 6 bachelorettes of Pelican Town in the game Stardew Valley. To many, she is a sweet, shy, awkward redhead who wants to do the right thing and is educating the future of Pelican Town's children. To some others, an ableist Nazi who needs to be shot in the head and is the worst thing to happen to Stardew Valley since, well, I showed up. But it's got me thinking, is she really that bad? Or is it just a misunderstanding of different things? In today's video, of my first of Let's Talk About series, we're going to be dissecting every heart event with Penny and how she is as a person and how she is as a spouse, and try to see if she really is as bad as some people like to believe. Just as a quick disclaimer, I'm going to be having random videos of Stardew stuff in the background of me just going through the skull caverns just on an endless loop, just as, you know, background video stuff. Mainly because, as always, there's always the impression that most people sometimes forget that this could be somebody's first video on Stardew Valley and first impression, so I don't want to spoil exactly what happens in the cutscenes, but then again, why are you here? So if you don't want to be spoiled, I would recommend stopping the video, go through these events yourself, and then go back and then come back to this video. For others, if you want me to include the heart events in future videos for the series, let me know. Thank you. On with the show. It starts out as if it's a normal day in Pelican Town, with George struggling to reach the back of his letterbox to try and get hold of a letter that's in the back there, and knowing that he can't quite reach it, and cursing his luck. Penny comes over and tries to help out, but in doing so actually does move his wheelchair without his consent or permission, and then goes and gets whatever is in the back of the letterbox and then hands it to George, referring to him very formally as well as Mr. Molnar, which also goes to show, fun fact, that the Molnars are the only characters in Stardew Valley, as far as we know, that actually have surnames. But from here it leads to the interesting controversy, as it were, which is that of ableism and the issues therein. First of all, I think the main issue as well is the fact of, people will say, you know, you need to be in the position to be able to talk about it, and I feel like I am in some ways, but not on the same level as somebody who's in a wheelchair. As I'd like to point out, I have autism, so I've got disabilities, but also I've got disability issues with motor skills with my hands, my legs, and I've been having issues with my back and my legs also giving out on me in the last few years. It's probably another reason why you don't see me on the channel that much anymore. But I think it's that thing of, I'm able to look at it both ways, in that both are kind of right and wrong in this scenario. Penny wanted to do the right thing. Penny wanted to go over and help. She wanted to get that thing for George and just do it out of the goodness of her heart. But I think the issue with her is that she has some social awkwardness and doesn't understand a lot of social cues, or maybe even disability cues, because it's a very reclusive town, is Pelican Town. Like, you know, they're not going to have access to everything and every bit of knowledge that we have, that we would say in a city or a town that we live in real life. With that, she tries to do the right thing. She tries to do a good thing for George, not realizing just how bad it can come across to some people. I've had it a few times before where I've had issues with my ability to reach for stuff, and even if you're not in a wheelchair, somebody trying to do stuff for you without your consent is still quite a bad thing. It's still quite an annoying thing. But I think it's also depends exactly how a person looks at it. Because for Penny, for her part, she does apologize. She does say sorry, and she tried to explain that she was only trying to help. And George is also in the right in explaining that he's mad because, you know, you didn't ask me. And he's, you know, mad that, you know, she would do that instead of checking in on him and maybe even saying, you know, coming over and going, hey, I see you're struggling with that. Would I be able to come and get that for you? And I think sometimes what also leads into the controversy is the responses your character can give and the outcomes that they have. So I feel like in some ways it's an error of judgment in the old game's part. I'm not saying that, you know, Concerned was trying to create Penny to be an ableist or anything, but I think it comes down to the fact of the responses don't really come out as well as you'd hope, because siding with Penny and saying, you know, it was a good thing that you did, is the positive one, and telling her you should have asked George first is the negative one. Honestly, I think if I was in charge of the event, I think I would change it so that the right response is to say that you should have asked George, which, you know, she apologizes, she's learned, she doesn't do that mistake again, and she apologizes, and George, he apologizes, but I don't really feel like he should, but also he acknowledges Penny was just trying to do good and didn't realize that she put her foot in her mouth. And, you know, the two of them wave each other off and they go on their separate ways, and they enjoy, and they go about their day as you have a little chat with Penny about the outlook of life and things like that. But I feel like the problem there is that's the negative response. That should not be the negative one. I feel like that should be the positive one. And instead of saying, you know, saying to Penny, that's, you know, that was a good thing you did, I feel like it should be altered so that Penny says, I'm glad that you think so, but I did technically take away the autonomy of George's body, and I would like to profusely apologise for that, so please don't enable me in that situation. So I feel like it's an issue of miscommunication on how it comes across, and that I feel like explaining to her that you did the right thing, but mainly you should ask first, and the fact that it ended so amicably between her and George at the end of that one. Honestly, I feel like that should have been the positive outcome. Though I feel like ultimately, because it's not gone that way, that's what's led to the controversy. It's led to a lot of people disliking Penny. And as a little side note, one little thing that always gets swept under the rug that I always see is kind of like a pot calling the kettle black in some ways, because technically there is a hard event where we kind of do the same thing to George. In his 6 hard event, he's struggling to reach a book on the shelf, and we come over and we end up just grabbing it and just handing it to him. Which you could argue technically it's a different scenario, a different situation, but technically we didn't really ask him. But I guess it could be excused because maybe George at that point maybe trusts us enough to do that, and maybe it's acknowledging the stuff that happened with Penny. Maybe he's saying, you know, maybe he thinks that you were just trying to help and you're just doing a nice thing, and maybe that's helped him realize. Either or, it's an interesting event that sometimes gets swept under the rug in that scenario, that sometimes we as the farmer can be just as bad as the NPCs, but I feel like because we're playing the characters, we like to give them a free pass for all the crazy stuff they do. And so we come onto the 4-heart event, or as I like to call it, the forgotten event when it comes to Penny, because this is one I don't see brought up that much. And it's another one where I can see where both sides are coming from on this scenario. So let's dive in. The farmer goes in to Penny's trailer, and Penny's in the middle of washing dishes and trying to tidy up, and asks for your help in trying to tidy up the place because it is a bit of a mess, and, you know, it's kind of, you know, she's embarrassed by it and she wants to live cleanly and live healthily. And you're both in the middle of working together on cleaning it up, you know, you kind of just agree and just go along with it. And then Pam comes in screaming and shouting, you know, why is this person in here? Why is she tidying? Why is she tidying my house? You know, you shouldn't be inviting people over. And Penny also arguing the thing of seeing that she's already been out on the booze and saying, you've got to bear in mind some of your choices impact me. But Pam does that whole thing of, you know, I put clothes on your back, and it's kind of like that thing of, you know, the abusive parent using that line of, you know, like, I gave birth to you as an excuse to justify everything, when it's, no, you shouldn't get away with that, because, you know, saying, oh, I put a roof over your head, I got the clothes on your back, that's what a parent should do. That's what a parent should do, and it's basic minimum human decency. And eventually it gets a bit awkward and you end up leaving. And Pam can at least acknowledge, and you know, she says that your character's a nice man or a nice lady, but says, I don't want people coming over my house when it's messy. So I can see this from a little bit of what Pam's saying, you know. Like, sometimes I have issues keeping on top of my house, well, my flat where I live. And it's definitely a struggle to keep it maintained, but you don't want other people coming in and seeing it. Like, you get embarrassed, you know, people seeing your place as a mess, and that there's shit everywhere, and all that sort of stuff. So I can see where Pam's coming from there. But when she started using a bit of that manipulation of the I put food on the table, clothes on your back, that's where you lose me. And I feel like Penny, again, you know, in her over eagerness to do well and do right, you know, ask you to help tidy this place where maybe she should have asked Pam first, but at the same time, Pam is too busy downing Jack as like at a record rate in Pelican Town to really care about the state that she's living in at that point. And I feel like there should be an option there that technically you should be able to decline, you know, helping tidy the place up, maybe explaining to Penny that, you know, technically it's not my job to do so. I appreciate that you asked me and that you're a friend, but, you know, I can't do that because if your mum comes in, she's gonna flip out at me. And, you know, I understand, you know, I wouldn't want people seeing that my place is a mess. And so, the 6 hard event, or as I like to call it, Ready Steady Cook, Me Edition. You enter the trailer once again with Penny cooking in the middle of making a dish, and says that she's almost got it ready and would like you to try it. And in doing so, you end up trying this whatever concoction she's come up with, some sort of chili as you wanted to call it, and when you eat it, you almost kind of be sick in your mouth. And from there, you've got 3 dialogue options. You can either choose to say that you actually lie and say that you like it, so basically say that, you know, basically it tastes like crap. And then there's also a version that says tastes like crap, but you're saying it a bit more jokingly, where you're asking how did she manage to get it to taste so rubbery. So depending on your dialogue options, if you lie, you know, she's quite happy about it and she names the chili after you. But if you say it's bad either way, in the sarcastic or actual mean one, she does feel sad and is crestfallen, saying that it was a failure, but still asks you to stick around and watch a movie with her afterwards. Now this one is a very interesting one because I've seen very much on the discourse on this is that it leans into the stereotype that women can't cook, which again, I can see where that comes from and why people be upset by it, but interestingly, I don't think I saw it that way, because, you know, as I've recently replayed it from one of my saves, which is the save you can watch me playing on screen, that with Penny, when you marry her, you see that she is actually very good at cooking. So I've always thought that she was good at cooking. This is just that one specific meal that she had been struggling to master. You know, there's always great cooks who are not very good at certain options. But once again, the issue is that the positive result is once again to lie to her, which I think isn't exactly that great. But the secret third step is choose that, like, if you don't want to lie to her, but you also don't want to hurt her feelings or anything, choose the option to, you know, say, how'd you get it to be so rubbery? So you be jokingly sarcastic about it. Then, you know, she'll still say the same sad dialogue, but there will actually be no change in your friendship points with her whatsoever. So that's all I really have to say on that one, in that I see it as somebody who's good at cooking but is struggling to master a specific recipe. Now we come to the big one. This is the one that always gets the controversy when it comes to Penny. Oh boy, this ought to be fun. So it starts by going into the Cindersap Forest, 8 Hearts with Penny, and she's there taking the kids out on a field trip and teaching them different things, as well as a little picnic thing that she seems to have set up going on, but that's beside the point here or there. And she asks if you want to stick around, and you can offer to, you know, help and teach certain things about farming and countryside stuff, or you can say, oh, I hate kids, I don't want to be part of this, and if that's it, then, you know, the cutscene instantly ends. And I'll get onto that a little bit, don't you worry, people. And, you know, she goes on to talk to the kids and everything about certain things that were going on in the valley and nature and all that. And Vincent also mentions that Sam and Penny used to climb trees together, but by that point, Penny no longer has a romantic interest in Sam and actually has an interest in you by this point. Because 8 Hearts is basically the, oh, we're thirsting for the farmer, alright, Jesus. Some of them need to, you know, back off. Some of us are actually married. And you can ask her about, well, she can ask you about the idea of having kids, and you can talk about if you don't intend to have any, which, you know, upsets her, or, you know, you could say that you would like to, or you just haven't thought about it yet, which can have neutral to good responses. And I can see people getting pissed at this particular event because of one specific thing. The friendship point drop from saying that you don't like kids. Now, I'm going to put a word in between my hands for a lot of people that are mad about this, and I want you to pay close attention to that word. You see that word? That's a very important thing. At that point, Penny's looking for a relationship with you at that stage, And she wants to make sure that both of you have the same interests. You know, you both want the same thing, because there are certain things that you have to compromise on, but things with having kids is always a very difficult thing. And she understands that, sure, you lose a lot of friendship points with her, but she realizes, okay, maybe they're not the one for me, and cross you off the list, because you don't want kids, but she wants one. That's perfectly healthy for Penny to do so. So the fact that people are mad that she is mad at you for not wanting kids in a relationship sounds more like there's problems with you than there is with her. And I think it also boils down to the fact that we now live in an interesting age of time and space and bollocks, where it's a case of, back in the day, we were expected to sort of have kids, to sort of grow up to have a family, have kids, raise them, this, that, and the other. But we now live in a time where, rightfully so, I would like to point out that you shouldn't be expected to have kids. You shouldn't be forced to have kids just because your parents pressure you to do so, or people pressure you to do so, or because society tells you. But I think it's got the inverse effect that now, in some ways, because it's normalised to not want kids, we demonise the people that actually do. Which, there needs to be a middle ground, I feel like. We shouldn't demonise people for wanting kids, and we shouldn't demonise people for not wanting kids. And I feel like Penny went about it a very respectful and healthy way. So the idea that she was being a prick about it, again, speaks more to what you think than her. Or as I like to call it, Penny's a spicy meatball. So it starts with her giving you a letter to meet her at the bathhouse after dark. I'm never doing that again. And by the time you get there, you talk to her, and she says that there's a reason she brought you here, and it's to fully confess her feelings, which is interesting because by this point you're dating anyway, so I always found this weird. Where, she's confessing her feelings and talks about how much she loves you and everything, and if you say, I feel the same way, which if you want to be in a relationship with her, you kind of should say that, and, she's happy, you both kiss, and weirdly enough, it's kind of implied that you bang. Like, when you marry her, she talks about the bathhouse stuff with a blush on her face. She says, "I'll never forget that." So it's not fully lewd in its structure and its speech, but it's loosely implied that there may have been a little bit more than just kissing. And then if you say, "I don't feel the same way about you," you lose almost all of your friendship points and you break her heart, which, honestly, yeah, she's in the right to be upset, because you just practically just said that giving her the bouquet, giving her all those gifts, they meant nothing. That you basically got her in a relationship to lead her on, which makes the farmer look like a complete ass. Which I feel like, again, the farmer gets a pass because we play the farmer, we don't like having mirrors held up to ourselves. Ultimately, I think when it comes to spouses, she's up there as one of the best. Sure, she's one character I marry on every playthrough, but, and it may be a bit biased, but it checks out, doesn't it? And with that, she is very sweet to you, cooks things for you like a lot of other characters do, but she's also very kind, also talks about the interesting things in her day, talks about her work, and that's the interesting thing with her. She's one of the few characters that not only doesn't give up on her dreams, but especially if you give her kids, you have essentially helped a character complete their dreams. Because I normally see the complaint that a lot of people have is that when you marry specific spouses, they give up on their hopes and dreams, they just become stay-at-home wives or husbands. But Penny still goes to work, she still teaches the kids, and she still is a great mother from what it looks like in her text dialogue, and she's still doing the stuff that she loves. She's just got what she wants, so she's got mission accomplished, so she's probably one of the small percentage that doesn't give up on her dreams and in fact gets the dreams while they're with you. So honestly, I feel like she is one of the top tier spouses in Stardew Valley. This is the one thing I can expect somebody might comment, and it's something that I see on a lot of Stardew Valley videos that people like to interject on. whenever there's a debate or an argument going on, a lot of people seem to go to that whole, oh, it's just pixels on a screen. Why are you getting so worked up about these characters? Why do you care about these characters so much? And honestly, I feel like it's one of the more dumber things to say. Normally the people that come up with that, oh, they're just pixels on a screen, are probably knee-deep in an argument they've just realised that they've lost. And they like to do the whole, it's just pixels on a screen, you know, oh, it's just a game, it's not real, as that whole, I got ya, I win, you lose type of issues. Which honestly makes you sound more like a disingenuous prick that, again, you can't even believe in your own statements to back them up, other than just using, you know, oh, it's fiction, you shouldn't wind yourself up about it. Which you wound yourself up about it, you know, trying to criticize people like Penny or Haley or any other character and debates and stuff like that in Stardew topics. Which I was going to put this at the last video of the Let's Talk About series, but I thought I'd just put it in at the first so I could just get it out of the way. But the thing is, if we're just going to not judge any of these characters on their issues and stuff because they're pixels on a screen, then why should we judge any form of fiction ever? You know, like Star Wars Revenge of the Sith. A lot of people used to think that that's a bad movie. You know, opinions have definitely changed since the modern age Star Wars. It's a good thing I'm not in that fandom. And with that, you know, people will say, you know, a lot of people will say, you know, it's crap, it's awful, it's rubbish, but technically because it's fiction, we shouldn't criticize it. But my honest point is, again, these people who say this are also the people that criticize these characters. But if it's just pixels on a screen, criticizing the characters shouldn't matter. Talking about the characters shouldn't matter. Their positives, their negatives shouldn't matter. But the thing is, they do matter. Things in fiction do matter to a lot of people in different ways. You know, like soap operas, novels, video games, movies, anime. Fiction does matter, so the idea that it's just pixels on a screen and that we shouldn't look at and dissect characters from Stardew Valley, to me, is just a shallow, baseless way to try and get yourself out of a hole that you yourself have dug. And that's Let's Talk About Penny. So this is the closing statements on such a thing. So ultimately, I've always looked at Penny as the absolutely adorable sweetheart that wants to do good, wants to get out of the awful living situation that she's in, and, you know, wants to educate the future generation, you know, with the children and stuff like that, and wanting kids herself. But sometimes in her eagerness to do well and to do good, she sometimes puts her foot in her mouth due to her social awkwardness and not understanding of the situation, and is only able to improve on such things when she realises, oh god, I've cocked up big time. And a lot of people say that, you know, she's under that category of the, oh, I can save her, which is true, but for me, when I first started playing Stardew Valley, I didn't even go after her because of the horrible stuff that was happening to her, or wanted to save her from her situation. I went after her because she was genuinely sweet, she was genuinely adorable. It was only really when I got back into Stardew Valley earlier this year that I really started looking into that sort of thing. Because back then, I was just playing it for fun. Like, most of the people saw me get married to Penny because I played it on a Twitch stream over 5 years ago. Oh god, it's been 5 years. But ultimately, I just thought that Penny was a nice, sweet, adorable character who was very kind, and also, at this point, if I had a nickel for every time that there was a character called Penny who was a redhead with green eyes and was just absolutely sweet, adorable, and you wanted to protect with every ounce of your being, I'd have 2 nickels. So yes, that is the end of the Let's Talk About Penny episode. I'm going to have a couple of other episodes planned, so next up, keep an eye out for this channel, because the next one will be Let's Talk About Haley. Is she really this judgmental person, or is she the secret sweetheart of the valley? And then after that, it'll be Sam. Is he Dr. Cool, or is he Dr. Boring? And the first look at friendships in the valley. Are Sebastian, Sam, and Abigail truly friends? But until then, I'll see you next time. As for now, I'm just going to slowly dread the fact that I'm losing my hair. Good night, everybody.